Moscow will forever be known as the scene of one of the most tragic crimes in American history. There's still sort of a darkness whenever you talk to people. It will be ever part of the university's history and the town's history.
There are 4 very, very important names in this case. Kaylee Goncalves, Maddie Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. And if you're gonna remember any names from this case, I ask that it be all 4. My name is Olivia Goncalves, and Kaylee was my little sister.
Everybody's going to work, and you look out the window, and there's kids running down the street laughing, and you're just like, how can you be out there playing? My daughter's dead. You know, Kaylee Goncalves is gone. Stop everything. Everybody in the whole world stop. And everything just keeps going.
My sister, Xana Kernodle, is one of the happiest, funniest people I've ever met. And I had the awesome privilege of growing up with her, and I still have a hard time coming to terms with the facts that it did happen.
Bryan Kohberger is accused of stabbing these 4 University of Idaho students in the pre-dawn hours on November 13th, 2022. The murder weapon, which was a knife, has never been found. This is a type of survival knife. Bryan Kohberger did not make his own plea. The judge entered a plea for him of not guilty.
Maximum penalties, life in prison, or the death penalty.
Due to the nature of the crimes, the state of Idaho is seeking the death penalty.
He was there to kill.
He came in with a kit. I believe he had a kill kit.
And you believe that everything right down to the implement of destruction, this large marine knife, that was all planned?
All planned.
It was inhumane. You wouldn't do these type of things to any living creature, let alone an innocent human being.
The star piece of evidence in the prosecution's case is the DNA that was found on the knife sheath that was left at the crime scene. That there's so much other evidence that's also pointing towards nobody else that we're aware of. How was Bryan Kohberger's car spotted leaving the scene? Why was his cell phone seen there 12 times, including the morning after the offense?
The prosecution would like everyone to believe that it's an open and shut case. But I think the facts they have make the case more open than open and shut. According to the defense, there is no connection whatsoever between Bryan Kohberger and the victims. And if there is no connection, then there is no motive. And if there is no motive, then it becomes very hard to make the case that he is the killer. And this is a graduate student, not a trained assassin.
It's more so about putting these pieces together, because I know what the puzzle looks like at the end. I have the box in front of me, but I'm missing so many pieces. How did all of these pieces fall to create what I'm living in right now? Where did this come from?
It was not the news Steve and Christy Goncalves wanted to hear. In August of 2023, just 6 weeks before the murder trial of Bryan Kohberger was set to begin, he waived his right to a speedy trial.
Sure you want to begin? Absolutely.
They would have to wait indefinitely for their day in court.
I was really hoping that we could get this show on the road, because the not knowing, it's agony. It's agony.
Steve and Christy, the parents of Kaylee, haven't left anything to chance. After the judge issued a gag order to attorneys and law enforcement, quote, to preserve the right to a fair trial, they drilled down on their own investigation and are now sharing what they believe that investigation found. Steve says he believes transparency is the best path to justice.
We're not gonna just sit back and cross our fingers and pray that we're gonna get justice.
It has been a long and painful journey for the families of Kaylee Goncalves, Maddie Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, the 4 University of Idaho students who were savagely murdered by a knife-wielding assailant in the wee hours of November 13th, 2022, as they settled down to sleep in their off-campus house on King Road.
Do you ever dream of your sister?
Yeah, I've had some dreams of her. There's times where I prayed and asked God to see her another time, and I did, and it just gives me some peace knowing that I know she's okay.
Jasmine Kernodle, who is speaking for the first time, was a senior at Washington State University and lived only 15 minutes away from her younger sister, Xana. Often mistaken as twins growing up, she says they were best friends.
She just was always fun. She was uplifting, and she took any bad situation and turned it into a good one.
Jeff, what did you love most about your daughter?
Everything. She cared about people. She was a people person. She cared about her friends just as much as like her family.
For the first time in her life, Xana had fallen in love with fellow student Ethan Chapin, a triplet who loved his siblings, boats, and working on a tulip farm.
The sweetest kid ever. They were just 2 happy people, and they're just seeing the videos and photos of them. You can just like tell how happy they are. They're just amazing together.
Sadly, they will now forever be linked in death. On Sunday morning, November 13th, Xana's friends started calling Jasmine, saying something bad had happened on King Road. Jasmine rushed over to Xana's house.
And while you're driving that 8-9 miles over to the house, are you trying to reach your sister then?
Mm-hmm.
How many times did you call her?
A lot. I called her a lot, called Ethan a lot.
Her next call was to her father. Jeffrey had been visiting Jasmine for Dad's weekend and was on his way home.
So you answer the phone, what do you hear?
I hear her kind of crying and just telling me to get back to Moscow and meet me at Xana's house. And, you know, my heart drops. Instantly, race back down there.
The house was cordoned off and swarming with investigators. As soon as Jeffrey said he was Xana's father, he and Jasmine were escorted to the Moscow Police Department.
And Jasmine, what does the officer say to you and your father?
I don't remember exactly, just that 4 people passed away, and that one was Xana.
You know, the worst day of your life, just your worst nightmare. It just happened, you know? What do? You can't do a damn thing.
100 miles away, the Goncalves family also had been getting frantic calls saying something bad had happened to their daughter, Kaylee. But no one knew what.
I just kept saying over and over, what do I do? What do we do? What do we do?
Finally, at around 4 in the afternoon, a deputy appeared at their door.
And we said, what's going on? I can confirm your daughter's died. She's passed away.
At that point, he said there were 4 victims. And I said, 4? And he said, yes, ma'am. I said, can you tell us if one of the victims was Maddie Mogen? And he said, yes, ma'am.
Maddie Mogen, Kaylee's best friend from childhood.
Give us a sense of just how close Kaylee and Maddie were in life.
I think that they had a very amazing relationship. The epitome of true best friends. from very early. I mean, they were sisters through and through.
They were completely inseparable.
As soon as the news hit, Olivia, the eldest of the 5 Goncalves children, and her parents went into detective mode.
We had 0 details. We just knew they were gone.
Olivia got into her sister's call log and frantically started cold calling recent numbers. She says a friend told her that Kaylee had been at the Corner Club bar around 1:07 a.m. and later texted a rideshare driver who Olivia managed to track down.
The rideshare driver said around 1:45, Kaylee had texted him requesting a ride from the Grub Truck, which is the local mac and cheese food truck, to take her back home to 1122 King, and she had with her another female.
Olivia then uncovered one of the most important leads in the case. The rideshare driver told her about a camera mounted on the Grub Truck.
So I was able to look it up and find Kaylee on the video, and I saw the girl that she was with was Maddie. So at that point I knew Kaylee and Maddie were together. They got into the car to go home together and alone.
The driver told her the exact time Kaylee and Maddie were dropped off at their house on King Road, 1:56 a.m. A timeline she says she confirmed before the police.
I immediately took it to the police officers. Here's her phone information. Here's the rideshare driver's name.
Olivia says Kaylee made a call to her boyfriend at 2:56 a.m., but he didn't answer. The Goncalveses believe Kaylee fell asleep shortly after. According to the police affidavit, Kaylee and Maddie were stabbed to death between 4 and 4:25 a.m. Just as they had done since they were little girls, they were sleeping in the same bed.
Those 2 best friends since little girls, I don't think there's anything more terrifying than what they went through. I really don't.
The killer took 4 lives in a matter of minutes, but he left behind 2 surviving roommates, one of whom would provide a key description of the intruder.
He was dressed in black, but muscular build and very bushy eyebrows.
If there is one picture that speaks to the Idaho Student Murders, it is this: 6 smiling college students, blissfully unaware of the carnage to come.
It's staged in a way that is almost, in a strange way, ominously predicting.
Investigative journalist Howard Bloom has written extensively on the student murders for Graydon Carter's online magazine, Airmail. He is now writing a book on the case.
On the ends of the picture are the 2 survivors. In the middle are the victims, and they're huddled together.
Kaylee, with a beaming Maddie on her shoulders, friends for life. Ethan, with his arm around Xana, young love in full bloom. A moment that should have been a memory of their idyllic college years would eternally be a reminder of the gruesome murders that put them in their graves.
What makes it so tragic is they're forever preserved in this moment. They'll never be able to leave this moment.
Hours after this photo was taken, the 4 friends would be murdered. Their deaths so violent, even the house seemed to be bleeding.
There was literally blood oozing out from the home. You could see it on the exterior walls.
CBS News consultant Brianna Fox is a former FBI agent and professor of criminology at the University of South Florida.
That's how bloody and gruesome the crime scene is.
According to the affidavit, which outlines law enforcement's investigation, the bodies of Xana and Ethan, who was sleeping over, were found in or near her bedroom on the 2nd floor. The bodies of Kaylee and Maddie were on the 3rd floor in the same single bed in Maddie's room.
How did your daughter die in that house? What do you know?
We know the autopsy. We know the means of what is officially how she died. She was assaulted and stabbed.
Several times. Her death certificate is the ugliest, disgustingest piece of paper that you will ever see in your life.
And every line is a horror show.
Every line, because there's causes of death and then there's contributions to death.
Christy and Steve spoke to coroner Kathy Mabbitt before the gag order was issued, and they say she told them how the two friends were positioned in the bed.
The bed was up against the wall. The headboard was touching the wall, and the left side of the bed was touching the wall. And we believe that Maddie was on the outside and Kaylee was on the inside.
According to Coroner Mabbitt, the killer's first victim was Maddie, says Steve.
And then from Maddie, he moved on to your daughter. You believe she had awakened at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, there's evidence to show that she awakened and tried to get out of that situation.
The way the bed was set up is what...
She was trapped.
She was trapped.
We know from the affidavit that Kohberger's cell phone pinged in the vicinity of the house 12 times prior to the murders. Steve says before the gag order, one of the lead investigators told him they believe Kohberger had been scouting out the house.
You believe these visits were like, he was like on an intelligence mission, a scouting mission,
Yes.
looking at lifestyle patterns when they came and went, who came to the house, methodical?
Yeah. He had to know when people were coming, people were going.
It makes the Goncalveses wonder if he'd ever gone inside the house.
I think that he at least had opened that door, went in, tested the waters, looked around.
Steve says the coroner told him the killer's rampage started on the 3rd floor, where both Maddie and Kaylee had their bedrooms. Christy thinks he wasn't expecting to find the two friends together in the same bed.
I do think that his plan went awry. I do think that, he intended to kill one and killed 4.
Brianna Fox also believes Xana and Ethan were collateral damage. According to the affidavit, Xana received a DoorDash food delivery at 4 a.m., then went back to her room on the 2nd floor. It's possible, says Fox, that Xana, still awake, came face to face with the killer.
And she sees somebody that she doesn't expect, and I don't think he was expecting to see her either.
One of the 2 surviving roommates, Dylan Mortensen, later told the police that she heard what she thought was crying coming from Xana's room. She heard a male voice say something to the effect, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Not something a killer would likely say to an intended target, says Fox.
He probably was trying to make a split-second decision. Do I run away? Do I kill her? What do I do? And he decided to kill her.
At approximately 4:17 a.m., police say an outside security camera less than 50 feet from Xana's room picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. Shortly after, Dylan, the surviving roommate, whose bedroom was near Xana's, opened the door.
According to the police affidavit, when Dylan opens the door, she saw a man dressed in black with a black mask, and she says he has bushy eyebrows. Those bushy eyebrows become very important when the police are making their identification.
The man with the bushy eyebrows kept walking to the rear of the house without harming Dylan.
Why was Dylan not killed? Again, there's no definitive answer. He didn't kill her because he didn't see her. He was sort of transfixed on getting out. He didn't kill her because he was satiated.
Or he was simply too depleted to kill again, says Fox.
Even stabbing somebody for a minute and a half, not only is that overkill, but it actually would become rather exhausting.
The police believe the murder weapon, which has not been found, was a military-style K-bar knife, similar to this one. The details are disturbing.
This is not a civilian knife. It was actually meant to tear apart bone, ligaments, organs. So this is extremely brutal and something that you would never expect a person to walk in and want to commit unless they took some pleasure out of the brutality of it.
After seeing the intruder, Dylan, the surviving roommate, told investigators she locked herself in her room. It would be almost 8 hours before 911 was called, causing an uproar on social media criticizing Dylan's alleged inaction. But Brianna Fox says it's not unusual for people to freeze or be too afraid to intervene.
She had no reason to, know how to handle herself in that moment.
According to the affidavit, the male walked towards the back sliding glass door and presumably left the scene. But committing murder and getting away with it are two different things, says Fox.
For an offender to get away with a crime, a murder, they have to bat 1,000. They have to be absolutely perfect. If they make one singular mistake, that's all it takes.
And that one possible mistake in this case may have been the sheath to the K-bar knife. One like this was found on the bed next to Maddie Mogen. It would lead investigators to the door of a man studying for a career in criminology, Bryan Kohberger, the alleged killer.
To see a timeline of the case, go to 48hours.com.
Day after day and week after week pass, and there is no suspect that is arrested. What was that time like for you?
That was the worst.
For 47 days after the murders, the families of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan, and the country waited.
We do not have a suspect at this time.
And wept. And weighed in.
People of Idaho and those throughout our nation who provided information has been very impressive. We've received over 19,000 tips.
Then, on December 30th, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was arrested in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. At the time, his attorney said Kohberger looked forward to being exonerated.
What goes through your mind when you see the face of the alleged killer?
Oh, I wonder why, who is this? Why, Never heard of the person before. It still is confusing. Why?
At this point, the families knew as much about Kohberger as the public did, a PhD candidate studying criminology just 10 miles away at Washington State University in Pullman.
I remember thinking, I only have a few minutes to look up this individual and to try to get any credible information before things start getting wonky.
Some of Olivia Goncalves' online discoveries of Kohberger made her uneasy.
He had made a few posts on Reddit in which he was conducting, it seems like a questionnaire to people in prison or jail who had committed crimes. How did you pick your victim or your target?
For 7 weeks, the families and the country were left wondering.
I think for this type of an investigation, 47 days is actually quick.
Criminologist and CBS News consultant Brianna Fox says the Moscow police kept things moving. Starting with a video canvas which produced footage from those early morning hours, showing a white car making 3 passes by the girl's house starting around 3:30 a.m. Less than an hour later, investigators say, the killer struck.
They noticed that this car approached King Road, left, came back, almost did a U-turn, finally went there around 4:06 in the morning, and that car then departed in about 25 minutes and sped off.
Multiple surveillance cameras then captured that white car as it traveled what appeared to be a less direct route back to Pullman, Washington, arriving around 5:30 a.m. That information helped investigators identify the make and model of the vehicle.
And we're looking for a 2011 to a 2013 Hyundai Elantra.
Washington State Police find the car parked outside graduate housing. They get the license plate and they get Bryan Kohberger's name. They then get the driver's license and they see the bushy eyebrows that in the eyes of one of the Moscow detectives must be the eyebrows of the killer.
Now armed with a warrant, investigators retrieved cell tower data from that morning, which captured Kohberger's phone around 2:47 a.m. in Pullman when it suddenly stopped connecting to the network. According to the affidavit, this was also around the time cameras caught a white Elantra leaving his apartment complex.
There was an indication that he turned off his cell phone, which is something that a lot of people do when they want to avoid law enforcement knowing their whereabouts.
His cell phone signal was picked up again 2 hours later south of Moscow as it traveled back toward his apartment building. The affidavit described a deeper dive into Kohberger's phone history that revealed this was a familiar neighborhood to him, going back several months.
Cell phone records indicated that he has traveled past and was very near the vicinity of this crime scene on 12 separate occasions.
And towers actually captured a 13th trip, just hours after the murders.
Anecdotally, a lot of killers, they like revisiting the memory of the crime. I won. I was able to get away with this, and you guys won't catch me.
But they had one secret weapon to make their case. They had the knife sheath, and there was a microscopic spot of DNA on this. Could they tie this DNA to Kohberger?
According to the affidavit, the DNA was found on the button snap of the sheath. But when investigators ran it through the national database, there were no matches. It's unclear if Bryan Kohberger knew law enforcement was watching when he left Washington in mid-December. Kohberger and his father, who had flown in from Pennsylvania, drove back home together in his white Elantra.
Kohberger, from what I've heard, tells the father that he's in trouble with his job. He's concerned enough about his son to want to make the drive back with him.
On the 2,500-mile journey from Washington, they are stopped twice for traffic violations.
Hello? What's also interesting is Kohberger's reaction to the police.
Is this your car? Okay.
He's pretty calm and cool.
Father and son made it home to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, where Bloom says investigators initiated a stealth operation.
What they did is they sent a team of Pennsylvania state troopers to Kohberger's family's house.
Law enforcement recovered Kohberger's father's DNA from the trash outside their home, which tested as a high probability it was the biological father of whoever left DNA on the knife sheath.
So that was the eureka moment which they decided they could get an arrest warrant.
At that point, they made the arrest of Bryan Kohberger, and they got a separate, essentially a search warrant for his DNA.
And when investigators compared his DNA to the DNA on the knife sheath, they say it was a statistical match, at least 5.37 octillion times more likely to be Kohberger's than anyone else.
Where you sit today, are you certain that Bryan Kohberger is the killer?
With what you know.
I don't trust anybody or anything, so I have to see it myself. I have to see everything.
As the months pass, Steve and Christy Goncalves remain a united front in wanting justice, but their wait has brought different perspectives.
Your mind is still open to the potential,
Of course.
that it could have been someone else?
Of course. Yep. I go into that 100%. Yep. Of course.
That's not where you are.
No.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think there's any slam dunk.
Criminologist Brianna Fox says with the gag order in place, any hint of Kohberger's defense has come from court documents.
It seems that the defense is alleging there was a rush to judgment, Law enforcement made an arrest too fast, and they focused on their client too quickly.
A defense filing did reveal Kohberger's alibi for the night of the murders. It simply stated Mr. Kohberger was out driving alone.
The defense is not necessarily having to prove that he's innocent. They just have to raise doubt.
Both Fox and Howard Bloom think the defense can find ways to poke holes in the prosecution's case, challenging some of the key evidence presented in the affidavit, including the cell phone location data and the white Elantra.
There's other concerns, such as whether Bryan Kohberger's car was accurately identified at the onset, or if that was revised after knowing what Bryan Kohberger drove.
The cell phone data makes one suspicious of Kohberger, but it's not convincing. It's not putting someone at someone's doorstep, it's putting someone in someone's neighborhood. If you can raise doubts about the validity and the accuracy of the cell phone data, I think you're halfway there to getting the case against Kohberger, either a hung jury or a not guilty verdict.
And there's more, according to the defense.
That there was no DNA or forensic evidence found from the crime scene at the apartment, car, office, or on Bryan Kohberger's person. So they were basically alleging, how could he have committed such a brutal murder and yet have no evidence found on him of that?
After consulting their own investigators, Christy and Steve theorize that Kohberger likely brought what they call a kill kit with him.
What do you mean by a kill kit?
I think he had a backpack.
A change of clothes. We don't know if it was coveralls, pants, hoodie. We don't know.
A defense filing also claimed the presence of other unidentified male DNA was found on the premises.
3 separate and distinct male DNA profiles were found from the crime scene. 2 were inside the house. 1 was outside on a glove.
The defense wants to know who are these people and what role could they have played in this whole story. So what the defense is doing now is trying to look for other narratives that make sense.
Howard Bloom has written extensively about this case, including a piece on a possible alternative defense theory involving drugs.
Maybe someone had reneged on a drug payment, and this was a retribution, vengeance for people not paying for drugs they had ordered.
I want you guys to respond to one thing that's out there, because speculation that somehow drugs were involved in this attack.
That's just Hollywood nonsense. I just dismiss that because I understand our society wants to believe in some of these movies that they watch. They don't have these crazy lives where they're crossing paths with people like that.
That storyline of it being drugs gives people a reason to think why it happened, because nobody knows why. And the reason I think it happened is because he wanted to. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to commit a murder.
Bryan Kohberger's defense attorneys argue there's a lack of evidence linking their client to the students.
The defense is claiming that the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, and the victims have absolutely no connection. There's no motive.
In the minutes after Bryan Kohberger was publicly named, the Goncalves family went online.
They just told us the name, and we immediately started Googling.
They believed they had found a possible connection through Instagram and immediately took these screenshots.
From our investigation of the account, it appeared to be the real Bryan Kohberger account.
Among the people this account was following were Maddie Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves, in addition to several people with the name Kohberger.
But when we looked through those, it appeared to have other family members that were related to him.
At first, Steve, who works in IT, was skeptical, thinking someone created a fake account immediately following Kohberger's arrest. But according to the family, they uncovered more possible connections.
You would go to Maddie's Instagram account and look at her pictures, and he liked them. Bryan's name was under a lot of Maddie's pictures, like that picture, and that picture, and that picture, and that picture. So he was actively looking at the Instagram accounts.
And the importance of that is what?
just digital evidence that this particular account had some type of connection with the victims.
48 Hours has not confirmed the authenticity of this account, which has since been deleted, and the gag order prevents investigators from commenting. After dedicating months looking for their own answers, the Goncalveses say they are mentally prepared for trial, no matter when it begins.
I think he's done. He's gonna feel all of us just staring at the back of his head. And he's gonna know that we are the Goncalves family, and he knows what he did to our daughter.
How could this happen to a group of kids that are doing everything the way they're supposed to do?
To not known is what keeps you awake at night. And it's every day, all day. It never stops. Why? There is no why.
It is as unexplainable today as it was the day Kaylee Goncalves, Maddie Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were murdered.
I wish we knew. They were, all four of them were just such great people and made such an impact on the lives around them.
For now, the families are left with thoughts of what might have been.
Kaylee Jade Goncalves has been recommended to receive a posthumous bachelor's degree. Her family will receive the diploma of the University of Idaho.
On May 13th, 2023, exactly 6 months from the day of the murders, an occasion that would have been a cause for celebration, graduation, was instead another reminder of what was lost.
Seeing all those graduation photos, it's just, they should be here.
Graduation is just one of many milestones that will be missed.
She would have been my maid of honor, and I probably would have been hers, and it's like sad to have to go through those life moments without her.
Jasmine Kernodle planned to work side by side with her sister Xana, creating their own marketing business.
It's just not the same without her because she just brought like such a crazy different energy than anybody else I've ever met.
Kaylee Goncalves' future was in sight. She had accepted a job in Austin working for an IT firm. Kaylee not only pushed herself, say her parents, but pushed them.
We lost that person that would force us to make new memories and force us to go and take on something that seems a little daunting at first.
Guys!
For the Goncalveses, amid all the loss, there was an addition to the family when in February, Olivia gave birth to a baby girl.
So her name is Theodora Maddie Kay. Obviously, Maddie Kay is after Maddie and Kaylee.
And if one were to believe in signs, there were, says Olivia, several with Theodora Maddie Kay's arrival. In the hospital, her room number, 1113, was the same as the date of the murders, November 13th. And eerily, the time of birth, 4:21 a.m., is in the time frame that Kaylee and Maddie are believed to have been killed.
To have birth and life and firsts, first giggles, first walks, that they would be there somehow, you know, even if it's just in namesake.
This is the Goncalves family. Maddie has truly been a blessing in our lives.
I'm Xana's sister.
The families of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan have all searched for ways, sometimes together, to cope with a horrible new normal.
We all are always going to be there for each other, and it's just difficult. We're all going through it in our own ways.
For Ethan's parents, Stacy and Jim Chapin, One way of coping involves creating a foundation, Ethan's smile.
Ethan just had a great smile. I mean, he smiled all the time.
Raising money for scholarships by selling tulips planted in honor of Ethan, who had worked at a tulip farm.
So Ethan will live on through the foundation. That's what motivates us to do this.
How do you live with this, Jeff?
It's not easy. Just gotta keep going, you know?
I think just like living our lives like Xana would want us to. I know that she would want us to talk about the life that she lived and to be her voice right now.
She had a beautiful smile. Her and Maddie.
The memories that we shared, we don't do it lightly because they are very private memories, and sometimes it feels like I'm giving away a part of them. But I do it for the importance to realize how great of a loss it is. Because nothing's gonna bring them back.
CBS next Saturday. 48 Hours brings you back-to-back episodes all summer long. Next week, beachside homicide.
How could a single mom be executed in Cape Cod?
I was knocked unconscious. I couldn't protect her.
48 Hours Crime Time double feature next Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Welcome to Post-mortem, a new companion podcast to 48 Hours. So I'm your host, CBS News correspondent Anne-Marie Green, and each week we will take you behind the scenes with correspondents and producers who know these stories best. We go deeper into each episode, explaining how the reporting came together and their personal experiences with investigating these crimes. Now, not only do I report for 48 Hours, but I am personally a huge fan of the show. So I'm really excited to take a closer look at these cases with the 48 Hours team to hear their stories, including, brand new details. And we're talking about details that never made it into the episodes. We're going to start, though, by answering some of your biggest questions about the Idaho Student Murders. This is a case that captivated and continues to captivate the country. And joining me now is longtime 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Sant and producer Liza Finley. Welcome, guys. So good to have you guys here.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. We're very happy to be here.
Yeah, this postmortem is something we dream about because we have so much information, particularly on this story, that we can't get to in the limited time. So this is a wonderful opportunity to expand and share with our viewers and listeners, in this case, some new details.
Before we get to our postmortem, let's listen to an overview of this week's episode.
It's been a long and painful journey for the families of Kaylee Goncalves, Maddie Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, the 4 University of Idaho students who were stabbed to death in the pre-dawn hours of November 13th, 2022.
Do you ever dream of your sister?
Yeah, I've had some dreams of her. Just gives me some peace knowing that I know she's okay.
Xana Kernodle's sister Jasmine and father Jeffrey are speaking out for the first time since Xana's murder.
It just happened, What do? You can't do a damn thing.
Everybody's going to work and you look out the window and there's kids running down the street laughing and you're just like, how can you be out there playing? My daughter's dead.
On the night of the murders, Christy and Steve Goncalves' daughter Kaylee was in the same bed as her childhood friend, Maddie Mogen. The Goncalveses say coroner Kathy Mabbitt told them before a gag order the killer attacked Maddie first, then moved on to Kaylee.
There's evidence to show that she awakened and tried to get out of that situation.
The way the bed was set up is what...
She was trapped.
She was trapped.
A judge has entered a plea of not guilty on Bryan Kohberger's behalf.
The murders of college students Ethan Chapin, Maddie Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Kaylee Goncalves shocked the country in November of 2022 and really captured the attention of the country. I think part of it had to do with how that this is a time in your life that is supposed to be one of the best times in your life. And every photo that you saw of them was bursting with life. So the idea that those lives were cut short, I think, really shook a lot of people.
This is such a deeply personal story, perhaps the most that I've ever been involved with. I'm a father of six who've all gone to university. I attended Washington State University 8 miles from where this murder scene was located. And when I went to school there, the idea of crime might be a kid stealing a candy bar from a store. It was just simply unheard of. So it's deeply personal. And to connect with the family, the Goncalveses, Christy and Steve, and to speak with Jasmine and Jeffrey Kernodle. Jasmine is Xana's sister and Jeffrey her dad, was the most profound interviews I think I have ever done. And Liza was in on this. We were all so moved.
It was so emotional. Mm-hmm. It really was.
You know, genuinely had tears in my eyes at times. And as I watched this hour for the 8th time, I still get tears in my eyes because it's the sense of loss is profound and it is felt all over the world. And you're right, Anne-Marie, this time of innocence, the adventure of learning, the deep friendships formed at university, and to see it interrupted like this, allegedly by a person they still don't have a motive for, just shocked everyone.
The Goncalves, they moved to the general area because they wanted a safe place to raise their kids.
Yeah, talk about ironic. They lived in California. It was getting kind of dangerous there, they felt. They have 5 children. So they went on a road trip, and we were going to find America's best place to live, the safest place to raise our family. And they settled on this beautiful, beautiful little town in Idaho. And lo and behold, just a few hours away by car where Kaylee went to school, the worst crime imaginable happened. And they regret moving. You know, they go, if only we hadn't moved.
There's also something else I wanted to mention at this point that the Goncalveses shared with us that we weren't able to get into our broadcast. Their daughter, Kaylee Goncalves, was a true crime fanatic. She watched all these shows. She loved watching 48 Hours. And she was concerned enough about crime that she would take notes, her mom said, during the broadcast. And she came up with a plan of action. Hey, if any of us are ever assaulted, if we're ever in a crime situation like we've seen on 48 Hours and these other shows, this is what we should do. She actually typed it out. And the family had a nickname for her. They called her the Protector because of this. And I talked to Christy about it. Can you imagine the horror when the worst possible nightmare, in this case, it's not a cliche, is occurring? Her best friend in life, Maddie, killed alongside her. And now the assailant is attacking her.
You know, one of the ironies, though, which you were talking about her philosophy after being such a true crime show fanatic, was separate. I'll go you right, you go left, so one of us will survive and be able to call the police and come to your rescue. Well, those 2 young women were killed in the same bed. They didn't have a chance to separate. She was trapped. Kaylee was trapped.
There are so many components of this that sort of give you chills. You focused on the families, which cannot be easy. I can't imagine it was easy to get them to talk.
We have a great colleague out in California named Greg Fisher who had established a relationship with the family. When we did our first hour earlier in 2023, I did a Zoom interview with Steve Goncalves And I felt as though we had really connected. They said, okay, you've got 5 minutes, because he was going from reporter to reporter. And we really connected, and we talked for 25 minutes. And when that story ran, we understood that the family appreciated how respectful we were. There was no sensationalism. This is 48 Hours. This is CBS News. And that connection continued. And so Greg Fisher was talking with the family out there and said, Peter would really like to sit down and have a longer conversation with you. And because, and Liza is really strong on this, they believe that transparency and getting these words out is important for them to find justice. They agreed to the interview.
Mm-hmm. There's a gag order, and that was issued by the judge, and it basically prohibits attorneys, law enforcement, officials from speaking. So Steve feels very strongly that that is not in the best interest of justice, because there have been so many rumors, so much false information out there, that he believes that real journalists, real officials should be dispelling these falsities. So he agreed to this very long interview, 6-7 hours.
Yeah, I heard Peter is legendary for his long interviews.
He is famous for that in our shop.
We're going to go 2 more hours on this. But
it was great.
They were extraordinary. And once, families, everyone has to remember this. Families that have gone through this kind of shocking trauma, they don't interview one another, right?
Yeah.
That's not the way we talk. All of us have lost someone in our families. When that's happened in my case, I don't interview my sisters about how you're feeling in things. And so sometimes when a person like myself comes into the picture, it's such a catharsis for them. There's so much they want to say.
What I valued about it is their willingness to pull us into this moment in their life, which is the most painful moment that they will ever experience. And it's not a moment, it's their life now. But we often, sometimes when we tell these stories, and 48 Hours does an excellent job at being compassionate and fair, but it is an hour and a whole case. And we don't sort of get a chance to slow down and be reminded of the human victims that are still alive. Xana's sister, Jasmine, has never spoken before. Her father, Jeffrey, never spoken before. And in this case, you didn't pre-interview them? You didn't get a chance to talk to them ahead of time?
No, not at all. Not with the Goncalveses either. But, I prefer that. I prefer that we get to know each other in the course of this interview. You always begin very gently. You talk about the sister that she loved, the daughter that he loved, and you work your way into the details. And I find when we both are trying to sort each other out, if you can make that connection, it becomes a profound thing, and they really open up. Jasmine Kernodle, Xana's sister.
Amazing.
She's just, it gets me talking to right now about it. She's the power of the grief inside her to be able to express some of that. And Jeffrey, in the which you saw in the hour, and you'll see him in other interviews in the future too. He physically reacts. Sometimes his body movement is even more powerful than his words. When when you talk about, when they heard the words from police that his daughter, her sister, that she was dead. Oh my God, how it hits him. And that was such
so
power.
Genuine and
Genuine.
When I was getting ready to watch the hour, I was sort of preparing myself for grief. I thought I will be so saddened by this. But instead, I found myself impressed with their strength, their power. There was sort of a weight to that grief. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It becomes, for those of us who work on these stories, we do so many of them, and they're all so horrendous. And there are those moments where you're sitting across from somebody or looking at them in the edit room, and you go, how real this is. And that was so real. These families, it's heartbreaking.
The Goncalveses, it's as loving a family as you will ever meet. And right away, they started digging in. And as Steve has said, we were not going to sit back and just wait for justice.
Right.
And when you realize what his daughter Olivia accomplished in her deep dive, which we'll get into,
Yeah.
but they moved ahead instantly. They channeled that grief into action.
So let's talk about a little bit the incredible amount of investigating that the families did, especially Kaylee's sister, Olivia. She found the rideshare driver who dropped Kaylee off at the home that night, something that she says even law enforcement had not discovered. I want to play a little sound.
Olivia got into her sister's call log and frantically started cold calling recent numbers. She says a friend told her that Kaylee had been at the Corner Club bar around 1:07 a.m. and later texted a rideshare driver who Olivia managed to track down.
The rideshare driver said around 1:45, Kaylee had texted him requesting a ride from the Grub Truck, which is the local mac and cheese food truck, to take her back home to 1122 King, and she had with her another female.
Olivia then uncovered one of the most important leads in the case. The rideshare driver told her about a camera mounted on the Grub Truck.
So I was able to look it up and find Kaylee on the video, and I saw the girl that she was with was Maddie. So at that point I knew Kaylee and Maddie were together. They got into the car to go home together and alone.
The driver told her the exact time Kaylee and Maddie were dropped off at their house on King Road, 1:56 a.m. A timeline she says she confirmed before the police.
I immediately took it to the police officers. Here's her phone information. Here's the rideshare driver's name.
You know, what's interesting about that right there is that the police had the wrong time when they returned home. By 11 minutes. So she was able to put that timeline on track, which is sort of, a domino effect.
Yeah.
They get the right time, they get home, they get this, they get that, they get that. And she was able to correct that right off the bat, which got them mobilized and moving in the right direction.
There is still so much to get into here. So when we get back, we're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's trial, what the defense might say to poke holes in the case, new evidence the prosecution might present, and a possible link, a link between Kohberger and the victims that the Goncalveses think that they've discovered on Instagram. Stick around. All right, welcome back, everyone. The trial of Bryan Kohberger had been set for October 2nd of 2023, but it was postponed because he waived his right to a speedy trial. So the question is, what do we think we can expect once this kicks off? Liza.
As we know, there's a dearth of information because of this gag order, but the defense has hinted at what its case will be. In a court filing, they have come out and saying essentially what they're going to challenge. In the prosecution's case, they're going to challenge, 1, the collection of the DNA. There were 3 male other DNA samples found at the scene, 2 inside the house, 1 in a glove outside. They still don't know who those belong to, and the defense wants to know why. They say there's no connection, none at all, between Kohberger and any of the 4 victims in that house. And if there's no connection, there's no motive, why would he have done something like this? And then, to me, one of the most intriguing ones, if it's true, we don't know any of this because it hasn't been litigated and it hasn't been argued in court. They claim that there's absolutely, now mind you, this is one of the bloodiest crime scenes ever. I mean, 4 people slaughtered with a military
and
style.
And we saw the blood on outside of the house. And I know you probably went back and forth as to whether or not you should show that, but I think it really sort of gave you an idea of what went on.
And the family told us they want the world to know and this is the word they use, the ferocity of these murders. It's important, the savagery that went into this.
Right. And as Peter said, that house was literally bleeding. If the house could talk, what would it say? That's a wonderful question. But so back to this intriguing statement that the defense has put out there. They say there's this bloody crime scene. We know how easily it is to get a hair or a speck of blood. They say there's absolutely no DNA evidence of anyone from that house or that house in his apartment, in his car, on his person. And if that's true, that is pretty intriguing.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about a receipt from Walmart and a Dickies tag that was found at his apartment. Though we don't know what items were listed on the receipt, what does the Goncalves family think this discovery really means?
The family has a theory. They believe that he brought what they call a kill kit, that he had a bag that had a change of clothes in it.
That's what they're calling it.
What they're calling it. And they said that, and we did not have time for this in the hour, but that during the course of the search warrant that was done at Kohberger's house, they have a receipt, and that the receipt, according to the Goncalves family, is in evidence right now. And it may suggest that he bought clothing that perhaps that he wore during the course of this murder is what they're suggesting, and that clothing was not found at his apartment after when the search was done. But even so, as Liza said, because we have done so many of these stories, the notion, when you're using a knife, for instance, and there's called castaway blood, as you raise it up and then back down, the hair, skin, blood, the notion that nothing at all was found in that car, nothing at all, is really quite extraordinary. And the defense is going to be playing that up. And remember, they say about his alibi for that night, Bryan Kohberger's.
Yeah.
He admits he was out driving late that night. He was driving around. That's what he says.
Mm-hmm. That would explain the cell phone in the vicinity, and also seeing that car on the surveillance cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And among the things, of course, they're going to talk about in the prosecution of this case was the 12 visits prior to the murders in that neighborhood, but also there was a 13th visit the day of the murder, once it became publicized, because this occurred, in the early morning hours. Well, later that day, prosecutors say that Kohberger's, according to the affidavit, his car was in that area again. But remember, he's studying criminology. And I'm sure their people would argue, yes, he was fascinated by this horrible crime. And as a criminologist, he drove over, as many people did, into that area to see what was going on.
But then there's always the theory that the criminal returns to the scene of the crime because they want to see what's going on, and they want to sort of get the last laugh. Ha ha, I got away with this. Look at everybody running around. Look at everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one theory that is out there that the Goncalves family has come to believe is the notion that Bryan Kohberger may have been inside that house prior to the day of the murders. And they base that on the fact that the coroner in the case told them that the assailant entered the house and the first people that were attacked were on the 3rd floor of the house. There were others on the 2nd floor. And that suggested to the Goncalves that the killer knew to go to the 3rd floor. How would he know that if he hadn't been in the house before?
So this is the family's filling in the blanks, though.
This is
got
the
some
family's
information.
conjecture.
They're trying to explain it.
Right. That is what we have not had any investigator tell us this. Of course, there's this gag order, and we have not been able to verify that with any investigator because of the gag order. But the Goncalves' mom and dad, Christy and Steve, believe that he may have been in that house prior to the murders.
When you really think about this whole thing, how does this person in this house that has 3 floors know where to go and how to do it and kill so rapidly? As one of our people said, he's a student, he's not an assassin.
Right.
But it seemed like he was so efficient, which is, I think, one of the reasons why the Goncalveses believe he had to know where he was going when he got in there.
Mm-hmm.
He had to know who he was after and what he planned to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Christy Goncalves says she thinks he went in to kill 1, but he killed 4.
So that he was caught off guard by
Exactly.
the fact that there were 2 people in the first bedroom.
Exactly.
And there was also the bit about Kaylee's dog, right?
Kaylee slept with that dog every night. And that was just that was their routine. And when officials got to the house, discovered that horrible scene, the dog was in a separate bedroom by itself. And so that just raised questions with the Goncalveses that, did he know there was a dog? Had he seen a dog in a visit? Had he actually even maybe given the dog a treat where it wouldn't bark at him? And did he put the dog in that room? It's just something that the Goncalveses have focused on and raised with us.
So we've been talking a lot about the different theories about how Kohberger may have committed these murders. But what is also new in this hour is the Goncalveses discovered what they think is a possible connection between him and the victims.
So the Goncalves family heard the name Bryan Kohberger. Olivia Googles his name, and they end up finding this Instagram account that the family believes was a genuine one.
I want to play a little sound from the hour about the connection that the family feels might be there.
You would go to Maddie's Instagram account and look at her pictures, and he liked them. Bryan's name was under a lot of Maddie's pictures, like that picture, and that picture, and that picture, and that picture. So he was actively looking at the Instagram account.
And the importance of that is what?
Just digital evidence that this particular account had some type of connection with the victims.
And if that's true, that's huge, because what it does is it establishes a relationship, a connection between Kohberger and the victims, at least two of the victims.
Yeah.
And the defense is saying there's no connection. So which is true? That will be a very important point to be made at trial.
As has been said by one of our experts in the hour, if there's no connection, there's no motive. Everyone who watches 48 Hours, who's listening to this right now, knows you don't have to have a motive. Prosecutors will tell you all the time you don't have to. And serial killers, Ted Bundy didn't have to have a motive for each of his killings. He just had a satisfaction in killing someone. And the Goncalveses believe that Kohberger, who again is accused of this, not convicted of anything as yet, of course, that he did this, in their opinion, simply to kill, to murder, to experience that rush.
They do it for pleasure. That's one of the theories by our criminologist expert, who said that a crime like this seems to be done by somebody, the viciousness of it, by somebody who takes pleasure in it, or has a sense of arousal from it.
Did you reach out to the Kohberger family?
Yes, we've done that many times. And we're still hoping that they will change their mind and talk about Bryan. And we hope that happens.
What I'm hearing is that the Kohberger family does not believe he did it. But there is something very, very interesting that Steve Goncalves was very clear about, that he's going into this trial with an open mind, that they think that it looks like Kohberger did it. However, maybe he didn't. And they have an open mind about that. Well, Steve has an open mind about that.
I was surprised by that, because that is typically not something that you hear.
No.
Is after someone's been arrested, usually families of the victims are convinced, usually, that, that's the right guy.
Yeah. And he has an open mind. And we as journalists also have to have an open mind.
Yeah.
Because the facts of the case are being held so tightly, so closely. There's a lot we don't know, and we have to remember that. And that was another challenge in doing this hour, I think, right, Peter?
Yeah, and absolutely. And Kohberger has said through an attorney when he was arrested in Pennsylvania, he looks forward to his exoneration.
There were others, though, that you reached out to that also didn't want to talk. Maddie Mogen's family, her parents, they did not speak to you for this episode.
Maddie Mogen, Maddie was an only child of her parents, and they have spoken, of course, at these memorial get-togethers and things, but it is so devastating. And you look at her face, you look at Maddie's face, and you see this bright, and she's intelligent, this big-hearted woman with everything in front of her. And they invested everything and all their love and wisdom in this one child, and that child is taken from them under these circumstances. We understand.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Chapin's family, who obviously are suffering enormous loss, they have chosen to not do an interview with 48 Hours for this. Perhaps one day, they'll want to talk, but we completely understand that they don't want to, and of course we respect that.
Well, what a moving episode for the first one of this season of 48 Hours and for the first post-mortem podcast. I really want to thank you, Peter and Liza, for being here.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. It's our honor to tell this story. It's so profound.
Absolutely. It is. It's touched all of us. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Be sure to join us next Tuesday for another post-mortem. Watch 48 Hours, Saturdays, 10, 9 Central on CBS, and also streaming on Paramount+. And be sure to follow 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts. You can also listen ad-free on the Amazon Music or Wondery app.